Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Elder of Rock. I am Stephen Elder, and today I'm going to talk about another rock and roll adjacent movie. Why is this one rock and roll adjacent? Well, it has Eddie Van Halen doing the score to this film. And what film is that? This movie called The Wildlife came out in 1984, written by Cameron Crowe. Kind of seen as a spiritual sequel to Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but is really a very different movie. It doesn't have any of the same characters, doesn't have any of the same actors except for a couple. Um, but they're not playing the same roles as they did in Fast Times. And a different high school, so it's not Fast Times, obviously. But this one takes place also in 1984. It was released in 1984, whereas Fast Times was in 1982. That one kind of had more of a 70s hangover to it, some 70s artists, 70s music on it. This one, though, is 84. The 80s are in full swing. You get some funny fashions and some kind of funny hair, especially by Rick Moranis, who plays a character in this. Anyways, yeah, so let's go over to the cast of this. And I think the other reason this was seen as maybe got a comparison to Fast Times at Ridgemont High is because this stars Christopher Penn, Sean Penn's brother, but he's playing a very different character than Sean Penn here. But anyway, yeah, he plays a very different kind of jock, hard partying, wild partying jock, not really smoking weed too much, smoking a lot of cigarettes, not weed, drinking a lot of beer. Anyway, so Christopher Penn is in it as Tom Drake, Eric Stoltz as Bill Conrad, Jenny Wright as Eileen, who you might know from Near Dark and Pink Floyd's The Wall movie, Leah Thompson, who was, of course, in Back to the Future, Elian Mitchell Smith, you might know him from Weird Science. He was the other guy, not Anthony Michael Hall. Rick Moranis, who was from SCTV and Ghostbusters, and then Randy Quaid makes a cameo in this as well. Um, yeah, so this is about a guy named Bill. He's just graduated from high school. He's getting his first apartment. His little brother Jim is kind of he's high school still. He's 15. He's kind of obsessed with the Vietnam War, and that's who Randy Quaid is a Vietnam vet who he has met and hangs out with sometimes. Um, and he's kind of like the guy that's the rocker heavy metal dude in this, I guess. Combat boot wearing, whatever you want to talk about. Anyway, yeah. So Leah Thompson is Anita, and that's Pete. She plays Bill's ex girlfriend in this at the point because he wanted to break up with her to have freedom. She's having an affair with a cop. Um, and Eileen is Christopher Penn's character's girlfriend, on and off again girlfriend. And she works at a department store. This is where the '80s comes in, a clothing store that sells '80s fashion. So you get a lot of that. Rick Moranis' hair is very funny in this. He's got some really funny '80s hair. Um, and yeah, so it's just about those adventures. Jim is kind of the rebellious troublemaker dude, not afraid to get in a fight, not afraid to hit on a girl in front of another guy, and you know put a cigarette out in his hand to show how tough he is. Uh, but anyway, what ended up is that Bill can't quite make ends meet at this new place, so he gets Tommy to kind of be his roommate. But of course, that gets out of hand, and they have a wild party. Rob Wood actually appears at that party, which is another very funny cameo. So that's a basic plot of this movie, but mainly the soundtrack is what really why it makes this movie kind of cool and stand out. Like I said, Eddie Van Halen did like the original sound score to this, so like all the incidental music, transition scene music, background music, whatever is done by Eddie Van Halen, and you can hear some future Van Halen songs in this movie, Blood and Fire, which was on A Different Kind of Truth. You can hear the instrumental version of this, the beginnings of that. I think also Good Enough might be in here. And then, but as the soundtrack came out, there was lots of licensing, blah, blah, blah rights. So there was really only one song included on the soundtrack that came out, which was called Donut City. Music on here called Out the Window, a song called Out the Window on here was also used in Back to the Future. My name is Darth Vader. I come from the planet Vulcan scene, which, yeah, if that's the scene where Marty McFly, he takes a tape of Eddie Van Halen's music, and you could see on the tape it says Eddie Van Halen because Van Halen could not be in the movie, the band Van Halen, but you could have Eddie Van Halen. Not many people know that that was really him, and I didn't know that for a while that that was really him. But the soundtrack itself, it had a lot of '80s stuff. Bananarama's in it. They do the main theme, the wildlife. Here Comes the Mirror Man by Human League is in it. Does a song in it. Some other things. It says that Andy Summers, Charlie Sexton, and Ron Wood also gave songs to the movie. And there's also music by Prince, Madonna, Little Richard, Van Halen, Billy Idol, Steppenwolf, and Jimi Hendrix. Yeah, that's not in here. So yeah, they said that those were cut from this DVD for licensing reasons. And then it says more recently HD broadcast had all the songs intact, but I could not find this movie on any streaming service. So the way you can watch it is if you get a DVD or Blu-ray. And they probably, I don't know if they've corrected that, but as of this right here, it says that those songs are intact unless you see an HD broadcast. But I don't, like I said, I couldn't find any streaming services. Um, but it's a fun movie. It encapsulates the '80s pretty well. Like I said, not as good as Fast Times, probably unfairly compared to that movie. And just because it was written by Cameron Crowe, he wrote both of these. I'm going to say the two people that were in this that were in Fast Times was Eric Stoltz, who he played one of Spicoli's burnout buddies in Fast Times, and then the other person making an appearance in this that was in Fast Times was Nancy Wilson. Probably because she was involved with Cameron Crowe at this time. I don't know if they were married yet, but they did a bit, but they were going out or whatever. Um, and she makes an appearance in this movie as a pretty pivotal character, small role. A lot different than the one she played in Fast Times, where she was just a blonde in a car. This one, she has a little bit of a speaking part in it, and a little bit of and a real different part. And I don't know if she was trying to get into acting or she was dipping her toe in acting or what. But as far as I know, these are the only two films that she ever did. Was this one and Fast Times. But like I said, what else? I don't know. I think it's a fun movie. Don't expect it to be as good as Fast Times, but it is good, fun encapsulation of the '80s. Set in California, but I think you could probably relate to it because of just the different things that happen in this movie are not necessarily California centric. Yeah, so check it out if you can. Like I said, it's fun. The wildlife. Eddie Van Halen did the soundtrack. If nothing else, it's interesting for that, and hopefully, maybe um, eventually one day we can get like a proper release of this or some of the songs that were on this because I think that they were cool, very cool, different things, some different keyboards type stuff that look like or not only different, but some keyboard stuff that maybe sound like it could have been like on 1984. Like this is between 1984 and 5150. So like I said, you might hear some familiar things and some unfamiliar things, at least as far as I know. I couldn't some things on here I don't think ever made it into any Van Halen song, but they were still pretty cool. I thought passages in here, different side Eddie because he's mostly writing instrumental stuff here, and that's not something he did or even necessarily like to do. Because I remember asking about his solo album, you know, he said it wouldn't be an instrumental; it'd just be what he does. He writes songs, and so it's not. He doesn't really necessarily write instrumentals too much. But anyway, I digress. Enough of that. All right, that's it. Again, The Wildlife, 1984, Cameron Crowe. Don't compare it to Fast Times. Yeah, because on Rotten Tomatoes, I didn't get a very good score on this. I think it was like 40%. Uh, um, and and I don't know if yeah, I think in general it didn't get good reviews. Probably because, like I said, it was unfairly compared to Fast Times. All right, thank you. The Elder of Rock, The Wildlife. I always sometimes don't get it in there right. The Wildlife. Thanks for watching.